My name is Chris Parrish. I'm 56 years old, and I'm a 16-year stage 4 pancreatic cancer survivor. It started approximately 5 years before I was diagnosed. I had significant weight loss, like I'd say at least 100 pounds. I mean, I was good, went 160, 170. I was down to 100 pounds soaking wet. And I was working. I just had a lot of digestive issues. And at that time, they didn't see anything wrong with the weight loss. I ran a daycare, so I was always running around after kids. So I didn't see a problem with it. It was the first time I was like skinny, but people were asking me, are you okay? Because you've lost a lot of weight. Like your clothes are hanging off of you. And I didn't really pay much attention to it, but the digestive stuff, I mean, I was popping Tums all the time and I got tired of that. So I went to my doctor and they just threw me on Nexium, Prilosec, didn't do any scans, didn't do an MRI, just thought that would work. Well, fast forward, I'd say like a year, I tried all that stuff and it didn't work. And I just got tired of going to my doctor. So I stopped and started popping Tums again. And that was roughly, I was diagnosed in 2008. So that was roughly like 2003 to 2008 that I was having issues, but they weren't alarmed about them. I was working one day, I worked at a call center for a major bank, and all of a sudden I just felt like I was dying. And when I say that, I couldn't eat, I couldn't urinate, I couldn't poop. And I literally felt like everything was stopping in my body. And it got so bad that I started crying into my boss, and I was like, I've got to leave. And I went and I called my doctor and I got in the next day. They ordered scans. They're like, Chris, you're never sick. And I said, well, I said, but I just got tired of coming to you because you didn't take what was going on seriously. And then I think this was a Thursday or Friday, got the scans. I mean, they got me in quick to get them and the MRI. And it was on a Monday or Tuesday that I got the call to come in. And I'm like, well, can you give me the results over the phone? And they told me I wasn't going back to work at this point because I just wasn't feeling good. And when I went in, I didn't take anybody with me because I just thought it was just another appointment. And that's when they told me I had a 5.5 centimeter mass in my pancreas and numerous lesions in the right lobe of my liver. They didn't call it cancer because it was just my PA. But she was crying when we were talking. So she knew the significance of it. And I literally had my life flash before my eyes because she didn't call it cancer. But when I asked her if they could just remove it all, she just shook her head and said no. And I was like, oh. And then she mentioned oncologist, and I was like, wait a minute, what? And that's just when I lost it. After that, I was in denial until I actually met with the oncologist. I'm like, they got the wrong person. It's just something stupid, an old sports injury, whatever it meant. But reality set in when I saw the oncologist. Oncology came about 2 weeks later with me advocating and making sure, right? Because my appointment was set out a month later, and all the reading I did said that I had 6 months to live if it was like late stage, which I didn't know staging at the time. So I had no idea. So with my advocating, I got in 2 weeks early to the oncologist. So the oncologist comes in, and really nice guy. And he told me I had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And I was like, so how many stages are there? And he said 4. And I was like, oh. And I said, okay. I was just sitting there wrapping my head around it. And I didn't ask him for my time frame to be alive, but I was told that I had 6 months with treatment. And I was like, whoa. I said, I'm 40 years old. How can that be? I said, that can't be. I said, there has to be something I can do. And he was, like I said, really nice doctor, but was having a hard time health-wise himself after I found out he was retiring after my first appointment with him. I think I was just numb at that point, and I was like, okay. I said, well, I'd like to have a second opinion. I'd like to go to Boston because I live in Maine. Boston's the next place down, so to speak. And the nurse was like, why do you want to do that? And I said, because I want to live. She's like, well, we can do just as good up here. And I said, I don't I don't feel that this is actually the place I need to be to beat this. And I said, no offense to you. I said, but we're rural and I'd like to get a second opinion. So with a little bit of convincing more from me, I went out and asked them to schedule me a second opinion. And that took me roughly 2 weeks to get into. Went down to Boston. I had talked to the oncologist via email, and she had a clinical trial. But she said I had the wrong type of pancreatic cancer for the clinical trial. So I went down anyway for the appointment. And that they kept changing where it was and who I saw. And I finally got in to see my 18-year-old oncologist and my 12-year-old student that was following her around, just to go down there to be told, well, just go home and do what they told you to do and get your affairs in order. And I was like, what are you guys not understanding? So I went home after that. It was laughable. I had to laugh because I didn't want to cry. And so at that point, I had a list of the top 10 cancer facilities in the United States. And I had always seen a commercial for Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and actually the commercial was a long-term pancreatic cancer survivor, stage 4. Her name was Peggy Kessler. I kept seeing these commercials, so I was like, well, they're outside the box, so let's call them and see what they could do. The facility I went to was in Chicago. I went out there. They flew me in and my mom in to have our first consult, and it was a 7-day consult. They run you through everything, and everything's under the same roof, so you don't have to go anywhere. And they literally treated us like rock stars. Like I was, as soon as I walked in, I was kind of not full of faith until I stepped through those doors, and I literally felt God had his hand on me. And I don't speak about faith a whole lot prior to cancer, but I have to say that they gave me my faith back and gave me a lot of hope. And they didn't tell me I was going to die. They said, well, you're young. This is what we're going to do for you. And they're like, just let us know. And I immediately was like, well, I'm here. Let's do it. Let's start treatment. The treatment regimen was so I had a clinical trial that was called intra-arterial therapy. And my doctor was one of the few doctors. It was a clinical trial between MD Anderson and Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and 2 oncologists worked on it. My brilliant oncologist, Dr. Robert Levin, I was a good candidate because I was young and hadn't had chemo. And basically, it's like a heart catheter, only they go to your pancreas and liver, and for 15 hours, they circulate 40 times the amount of chemo through your organs impacted by cancer. So through my pancreas and liver. And I was strapped down, sandbagged, so I couldn't move, and morphined out of it. And I was able to do one of those treatments each month, and I did a total of 4. So I did one in August, September, October, and November. And then my blood work just plummeted. Platelets, red blood cells, white blood cells, everything just tanked. And I had to stop the treatment. But I was also doing a drug combo called FUDR. It has leucovorin mixed in with it. And that was my regular chemo that I continued for 3.5 years. After the intra-arterial, I had to stop. And with the intra-arterial, I went through, it was at least 8 to 10 blood transfusions, platelet transfusions. I missed a little bit of chemo. I think I might have taken 6 weeks off when that happened, but every 3 to 4 weeks I was out there getting it. And my job was to make sure my body was ready for whatever they did. And the FUDR, I started getting neuropathy, and we didn't know if it was from residual stuff from uh, the intra-arterial therapy. So they dialed back my FUDR to make it so I had a better quality of life as well, and the neuropathy came to an end. So very grateful for that. My intra-arterial was cisplatin, mitomycin, and I want to say the third was oxaliplatin or something like that. It was three old school drugs, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced medically before pancreatitis. But yes, it was. I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't realize how hard it was. Now that I look back on it, I'm like, I just did what I had to do to survive. But when I look back on it now, I'm like, wow, just wow. They don't even do the intra-arterial anymore because of the toxicity that it can cause, and people can bleed out if they move. You're just as good as dead because the chemo will actually go into your body, the full dose of it, and that probably would kill you right off the bat. Really, it was just learning to live with the fact that I might have to do chemo the rest of my life. And it was just preparing myself for that. And the chemo, they dialed it back enough that I had 2 to 4 days of being down. And then the rest of the month, I was out learning to live again. I mean, I would go to concerts, I'd go to ball games. I mean, people were buying me tickets to things left and right, and I was like, let's do it. And like, I think I would get back from something, and the next morning, I had to catch a flight out, and I knew I could sleep on the plane because I just didn't. If I only had a certain amount of time, I wanted to make sure I utilized my time doing what I really wanted to do and what I loved. For pancreatic cancer, I have to say, pancreatic cancer has, I'm on the board of the National Pancreatic Cancer Foundation, as well as having my own nonprofit here in Maine. But pancreatic cancer has some great financial assistance out there. And the National Pancreatic Cancer Foundation, Project Purple, what's the one? There's one in Connecticut. There's Dawn Hill Fight Foundation. There's numerous places out there where you can find resources, but it's hard. I have to say the National Pancreatic Cancer Foundation has some great resources for pancreatic cancer, and I enjoy saying that, as well as my nonprofit. I mean, we do all cancers, but pancreatic cancers are my baby. I'll always be an advocate for that. But it's about finding resources that are valid. So anybody that's out there facing you've got to Google and discern, or have somebody Google and find, or call. Like there's so many places that you can call with pancreatic cancer, and they can get you for clinical trials. Dietitians, which is so important to a pancreatic cancer journey. A digestive cancer, you can't not have one. And I think that that's important, to just be your own best advocate, and know that that nobody's going to do it for you. Your doctors won't, your nurses won't do it. If you're lucky enough to have a family member or a friend that can do it for you, that's great. But you really got to put the work into. I mean, I was diligent. I was not going to die from this. That was, I kept telling people that. They're like, "Are you living in reality?" I said, "Well, it's my reality. I'm 40 years old. This is not going to take me down." It did take me down a little bit, but it didn't take me out. And being your own advocate, never, it's all about attitude when you go into it. People were like, "You're overly positive." And I said, "Actually, no, I'm not. I'm doing this for me and the people around me, because if I don't stay positive, nobody else will." And I think it's just putting yourself, I started reading The Power of Now and realizing that the present moment is all you have. And that set me on a journey of self-discovery on, like, how do I stay more present during this, and started reading Buddhist monks like Thich Nhat Hanh and things like that, and just being peace, and how to be very thought-provoked during my journey, and watching the words that I spoke, because your words create your reality. And if people are telling me I'm going to die, well, that's their reality, but that's not mine. And you really have to put yourself in that mindset of, mine was never say surrender, never say die. Like, let's just do this. It was my job to beat cancer. And I was not, I was a hard worker. So I knew I could do my part. It was just finding the right facility. And I think that's important too, is, you interview doctors. You don't just accept what they say. If you're not comfortable with a doctor, move on. If they're not working with you as part of the team, move on. Get different doctors, have a second, third, fourth backup plan, because you never know when you might need it. And so all those things are just so important. Faith, having a good team around you. I'm grateful for family and friends that, even though eventually they came to my side of the street where I was like, I'm beating this. After the 6 months was up, I think they started believing more and more. And as did I. I had to talk my reality because nobody else was doing it for me. And I wasn't going to die at 40 years old. I never got no evidence of disease because I was put on a chemo holiday in January of 2012. I had it, my last chemo December of 2011. And when I got in, my doctor, my oncologist, Dr. Levin, was like, so we're not doing chemo this month. We're going to have you go on a chemo holiday, which they actually wanted you to do these things because it elongated your ability and allowed your body to kick back in and see what your body could do. So he's like, your body, we need to see what all the chemo, because if you think, I had 4 intra-arterials that were 40 times the amount of chemo, and then I had already had 3.5 years of chemo every 3 to 4 weeks. So I haven't ever been able to figure out how much chemo I had, but it was a lot. And I didn't want to go on a chemo holiday. They had to talk me into it. I was scared. I'm like, this is what's keeping me alive. And he was like, we need to see what your body can do. So, and that's 2011, of December of 2011 was my last chemotherapy. And I've been on a chemo holiday ever since. All my scans came back clear. It's bizarre to say, not bizarre, it's surreal to say it's been 16 years that I've been coming here. A lot of things have changed. My emotionality was through the roof prior to getting here, and my first day through blood work. So just checking in, letting y'all know that I got the good to go for another year. I go back, I started doing every 3 month scans. Of course, you're worried, concerned, but so so I had my 3 month checkup, and between my first 3 month checkup and my second one, I thought it was a gallbladder attack. And once I had to go in here locally in Maine, and once I got back out there, I was having chronic pancreatitis. But what they realized is my pancreas shriveled up, and all I have left is the head that they can see. So it was kind of like a natural Whipple that I have. Every time I get scans done, they're like, well, you had a partial resection. And I'm like, actually, no, look, I didn't get gutted. And so I actually have to remind my facility that I never had the Whipple. It just shriveled up because of all the chemo. My liver is doing great because that regenerates, but the pancreas does what it wants when it wants, and doesn't do what it wants when it wants. So we just work symbiotically together and find the best way through each day. People are like, it's kind of toxic positivity. And I was like, those are your words. You can be whatever you want. But for me, this is how I get through my life. And, that's just how I have to be, because you don't get second chances I've lost a lot of friends to pancreatic cancer, all stages, had the Whipple, not had the Whipple. And I know which way it could have gone, and it didn't. And so I am going to be that positive person. I'm always going to remind you that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I talk to people all over the world with pancreatic cancer, and I leave them better than what I found them, because they're scared, they're crying, and by the end of the conversation, we're laughing, and they've got the tools and the positivity and the hope that they need to face it head on. It carried me a long way. It still does to this day, but hope, there's a quote, I can't remember what, but hope is a powerful thing, and it's probably the most powerful thing that you can ever have in your life, in your lowest point, in your highest point, because it's something that allows you to hang on to something tangible, and you can't see it, but you just gotta have it. And I think that's the hardest thing. And when you can talk to somebody that has had hope and still is living a hopeful life, and I have to say that I live a pretty darn good life. I don't complain about my digestion, because really nobody wants to hear it. And but I'm alive, and that is huge, and I celebrate that every day. Don't settle. Just don't settle. You wouldn't People don't settle on buying cars. They go to find the best deal. Why not go find the best possible treatment facility for your pancreatic cancer? Because it really, truthfully, I have a few people around here that have survived through Whipples and stuff, but do your due diligence. Find good facilities, reach out to doctors, clinical trials. I wouldn't be here without a clinical trial. But you also want to have that good team. It needs to be a team approach. You need to be a part of your team. So that diet, nutrition is huge. Keeping your body fueled is such a key to survival in this. But also finding a place where you just feel comfortable and that they've got your back, and having backup plans, like even your oncologist that you're going to, what's the backup plan if this doesn't work? Create that game plan so you know in your head, okay, well, if this doesn't work, then we got this, and this. And don't wait till you start treatment to go find a second opinion. You need to do it before you start treatment, because your first treatment, my oncologist told me this, your first line of treatment is your most important, because that's your first line of defense. So always just do your due diligence before actually starting a treatment. We are all scared. It's a scary thing. I had to put on my big girl pants and just have faith that I was getting to the right place. And that faith has stayed with me 16 years.